Welcome to the Football Pod. My name is Konstantin Eckner, and please welcome with me my co-host, Abel Mezaros.
Hello, Konstantin. Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We have a really interesting discussion today. We are not taking a winter break, just like European football, just like the top leagues. But our guest today, who manages in the Champions League and also in Austria, is currently on a winter break. So we got a chance to catch up with him to talk about American football and talk about differences between top European football and then playing in the MLS and coaching in the Champions League. So maybe you can tell us more about our guest today, Konstantin.
That's right. Our guest is one of the few American coaches who have made waves in European football in the past couple of years. He manages one of the most fascinating clubs on the continent, in my opinion. So we hope you enjoy our discussion with Red Bull Salzburg's Jesse Marsch. Jesse, thanks for joining us. To start right off, you have the luxury of an extended winter break in Austria. So where are you at right now in terms of preparation for the second half of the season? Are you trying to improve fitness? Are you working on tactical details? Give us an update on what's going on in Salzburg right now.
Yeah, first, Konstantin, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Normally in Austria, when it's a normal season, they have almost a 2-month break between games, which I believe from our experience last year is just too long. So this year it's more of a 4-week break. So we took 2 weeks off, and then we're having 2 more weeks of preparation, and then we'll get started in our league again. So we're kind of what we call in Trainingslager or in like preseason camp, but we're doing it here in Austria. We have a lot of snow on the ground right now, but we have a heating system in our fields. So the training conditions have been good enough, and then we'll be ready for our league starts up again the weekend of the 22nd, and then games start coming pretty fast again.
So it's interesting that you mentioned the winter break, right? Because obviously being from the US and then having being one of the original legends of the MLS, you're definitely used to having these longer different schedules in terms of the season, but you wouldn't have basically soccer for a good 3-4 months. And I want to ask you in terms of the differences of you coming over to Europe for good for 2018, over to Leipzig. And what did you feel like, I guess, apart from this kind of calendar year, what were some of the things that you had to adapt to in terms of European, German environment, and how different do you think it is from the US?
Yeah, I've been very aware of how the cycles work in Europe for many years, and for a long time in MLS, we've tried to come up with ideas to match our calendar a little bit more with FIFA and with UEFA. The intensity in between the international windows is something, especially when you're, in Leipzig and here in Salzburg, we were always playing in Europe. So you have to be ready for the games to come fast and be ready to prepare and train and get everything moving in the right direction with relatively little preparation time. But I'll tell you, I love it. It's great to be on the international calendar. It's great to work with international windows as far as transfer goes. All the things that we've always said about MLS for many, many years that don't seem to make a whole lot of sense, you can really start to feel that and understand that even more once you get over here in Europe and work on the normal football calendar. So one of the things I do enjoy is in MLS, during the FIFA breaks, we would still be playing games. Mm-hmm. And here we can actually enjoy a free weekend, maybe a few days away, kind of recharge the battery again before we get into it and throw ourselves 100% into the work again for another 5-6 weeks. So, the only other part I would say that's really important in terms of the learning curve is understanding culture, European football culture. Understanding, what a club means to the city, to the people, how the city may have also helped create the identity of what the club is, and to honor that in your daily work and make sure that whatever the team does when they step on the field, that they're a real true representation of what the fans and the supporters are of that particular country, city, club, everything. So that's really important. And frankly, it's a lot of the fun is making sure that's a big part of what we do.
So that brings me to another question. There haven't been that many American coaches who worked at top-level European clubs. Jesse, do you believe that the level of coaching in the US is at a point where we could see more in the near future? And what are the biggest obstacles for US coaches in terms of breaking through on the European scene?
Well, I think it's not going to be easy. The first hurdle is the coaching license. And there's no way of getting around it. You have to be UEFA coaching trained. And that requires years of preparation, the B, the A, the Pro, the Fußballer, what they call in Germany. This requires years of dedication to understanding, and explaining and learning what different coaching methodologies and philosophies are. So obtaining the license is the first requirement for being a pro coach in Europe. And you have to often be sponsored by either a federation in a particular country or a club in a particular country. Then there's right now the other, I think, really good example of an American coach is Pellegrino Matarazzo at Stuttgart. And he has been here living in Germany for 25 years. So I played against him in university. He went to Columbia University. And so it's, for us to see each other again after so many years has been a lot of fun. But I mean, he took a totally different path. He played in the lower leagues in Germany. He then lived here and went through academies, went through all of his football licenses in Germany. He married a German woman. He has a German family. He speaks German fluently. And he kind of grassroots developed from academies through football licensings, then through the 14s, the 16s, the 19s, an assistant on a pro team in Hoffenheim, and then he took over at Stuttgart. So that's a little bit more of the organic path, I think, than just growing up in the U.S., playing professionally in the U.S., and then trying to move over here. I think that's, another good example of a guy like that is Steve Cherundolo, who was at Hanover for so many years and then has taken his German licenses and now he's actually looking for a job back home in America with MLS. So he's going in the other direction. So, but if you ask me about the expertise of coaching in MLS and the Americans in MLS, I think there's I have a lot of good contemporaries who I think are good coaches in MLS right now, who are doing good things that have developed a style, that have developed methodologies and are really bright coaches. But I think there will still be massive hurdles in terms of getting over here in Europe and finding, without really going through the stages or the stepping stones. Because what you find is what I talked about before is clubs here, they're a major part of the culture of different countries and cities. And for a sport director or an owner of a club here in Germany, Austria, England, France, whatever, to invest in an American who maybe doesn't know the language or hasn't adapted to what football is in Europe or in that country, in that city, to entrust him with the future of the club and for the fans and supporters to trust them, it's a big leap of faith. You even saw how I was welcomed here in Salzburg with a banner that said "Nein zu Marsch," no to Marsch, right? And I had to come here. I knew German. I had been inside the company. I had adapted to our football. I had adapted to who we are. And a big reason why I did all those things was so that once I stepped on into this role, that people would give me a chance and give me a chance to show that I'm capable of leading the team that they love so dearly. So, yeah, there's a lot of obstacles and it's not easy. I'm thankful that I've been able to navigate it and that there's people around me that have been able to trust me the way that they have. But that's been a big part of my success is that people believe in me. So that will always be key.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because I think like on other interviews you've done, I know you and Grant Wall, we've had on the show before, like you were talking about a little bit the perceived difficulties of an American. And I think that sort of barrier to players have now I don't want to say it's shattered, but there's some cracks in it with all the success of the recent younger American players.
Absolutely.
And for coaches, I still think I mean from a European perspective and from my American perspective as well, is that there's a different level of understanding or even just the perception of them, and they're not going to be necessarily the first choices. So I really appreciate that you shared us these kind of insights, because in some ways you are kind of blazing the trail, or also I guess following the trail of others like Bob Bradley, who you've obviously got a huge relationship with in terms of your playing career, and then going right into assistant coaching with him for the national team. Can you kind of for those of us that might not be familiar with that, what was sort of the decision that influenced this move from finishing your career obviously at Chivas, and then going to the national team, and then Montreal Impact? Like, what were some of the things that influenced that? Or because it like when you look back at it, some of the steps seem sort of like natural steps, but then there's also some kind of jumping around, or maybe I'm saying that wrong, but I think
no, I understand. I'll take you through a few different phases of kind of how I process things. When I was 25, 26 years old, I had a couple opportunities to come here to Europe, and they weren't with big clubs. It was, I wasn't a great player. I was above average player. I would describe it, a very above average. But at that age, I decided to stay in the U.S. because my wife was pregnant, and we decided to kind of stay in MLS. And at that point, I made the decision, all right, I'm going to coach when I'm done. And so I really honestly treated the rest of my playing career like it was a research project. And in the off seasons, I would come visit friends that I knew, that I had maybe played with, or that I knew that were playing for clubs in England, that were playing for clubs in Germany, that were playing for clubs in Spain. And I would come and I would watch them train. I would try to speak to coaches. I would watch games. I would travel around to watch lower divisions. I really tried to learn and take notes and see way things operated. And quite honestly, I didn't do it with the mindset that I was going to eventually come here to coach, because at that time it was not possible, right? Nobody had been doing that. It was more that I wanted to be a coach in MLS, or maybe even in college, but I wanted to really kind of start to wrap my mind around what that was going to be. And so between working on my leadership skills, my communication skills, between taking my coaching licenses, between traveling and watching other football environments here in Europe, I was really starting to formulate who I wanted to be as a coach. And that was one of the reasons why Bob even put me on his staff as an assistant coach for the U.S. national team as soon as I finished playing, is because he had known that I'd been doing a lot of preparation in those areas. Now, as an assistant coach for the U.S. national team, I say it's the best internship for an aspiring coach that you could possibly have. And I said the other thing I say about it is you're paid so as well.
It doesn't hurt.
But when you have this job, you're playing international. You're working with the best players in your country. You're preparing against the best coaches and the best players around the world. You're preparing for the biggest tournament in the world, that is the World Cup. So you're really now able to delve yourself into what high level football is. So I really use that, I think, to also help prepare myself for the next steps. Then coming to Europe, when I talked about adapting and learning cultures, and even going to Leipzig as an assistant, a big reason why I did those things is because I watched what happened to Bob Bradley, right? And I know how hard Bob Bradley works. I know how intelligent of a man he is. I know how committed he is to trying to be the best coach that he could be. And I watched England chew him up and spit him out. And when I watched that, it was painful for me as a close friend of Bob. But I also thought that if that was something that I ever wanted to do, that I would need to make sure that A, pedigree matters, and B, really adapting to the culture matters. Now, and when you adapt to the culture, you cannot be a chameleon. right? You can't just now only represent the things that culture is, because that's not being true to yourself. But certainly it needs to be included in who you are. So a big part of the reason why I learned German and have dedicated myself so heavily to becoming fluent in German is so that people don't just treat me like another American, right? That they look at me more for what the way the team plays, than who I am as a person or who I am not as a person. And I think that's been really important to my success, certainly here in Salzburg.
You mentioned something particularly interesting, and that is perception. Football is a team sport, but the coaches and managers play a special role in this ecosystem. When you take a look at media outlets, the most profile pieces are done on coaches. So you're at the center of attention. And you talked about the no to Marsch sign, for instance. But also, on the other hand, your dressing room speech during the match against Liverpool went viral. And many people saw you with different eyes after that. Saw you as this outstanding mentality guy. But of course, you're not just giving these kind of speeches all the time. So maybe they were more narrow-minded in their perception of you as a person and as a coach. How much do you think about public perception and your reputation? Is it something where you read the papers and think about the way the media and pundits and even other club officials see you as a coach and as Jesse Marsch?
I'm very aware that perception is reality. So, like even this podcast, right? Like, you guys emailed me, it would have been really easy for me to go, no, I'm busy. Right. But I understand. And I do a lot of, like, I have a Zoom call later tonight with Yale soccer. Okay. A colleague who has a friend who's the coach at Yale soccer asked me if I could do this for him. Tomorrow, I'm a keynote speaker for the US Soccer Convention. And it's a big honor for them to even ask me to do such a thing. But I do these things a lot because I try to help people understand who I am and how I believe. Do I think it's that unique or special? No, not necessarily, but I think it's unique and special to me. And so even with me coming to Europe here, one of the first things that I was asked by the media here in Austria was, what do people think back home of you being the first coach to coach in Champions League? And I said, first of all, I'm not sure that that's true, that I'm the first American to coach in Champions League. Later, they found out that it was true. And second is, I'm not sure how many people really know. And then after we had success last year in Champions League, and maybe the halftime talk against Liverpool had something to do with it too, then I started to realize that people were recognizing what was happening back home. And so, then I carry a responsibility as well, I think, to make sure that I hold the torch for American coaches here in Europe, but in the end, the best way to do that is to do my work and to represent the club I work for, and to try to create my version or our version here at Salzburg, our version of success. So all these things do matter, right? They do matter. What I say, how I say it, what I believe, how the team plays, how I work, they matter. Right. And it matters certainly the most important thing is it matters for the work that we do in Salzburg and how our team is able to achieve success. But then, if I want to pursue a long career in this job and I want people to believe in me and think that I can be the type of person that can take their club, their team, their players, their city into the next stages of success, then I have to make sure that people understand who I am and how I work and what I do, and make sure that it fits with what they're trying to build. So I enjoy that. I'm definitely, there's no question, I am a mentality coach. I freaking hope so, right? I hope that when my teams step on the field, they fight and run and battle and do everything they can to claw their way to success, but also do it in a way that still represents a sophisticated way of arranging themselves on the field and tactically being intelligent and still now finding ways to be better than the opponent. That's the goal. So it's not one thing, guys, it's everything, and so to do the job effectively, I have to have areas of expertise that are specifically related to what being a football manager is, but also I have to make sure that there's that when people, when players, when fans, when presidents, when owners, when they see me, that they think that's a guy that we want on our side.
Yeah, I appreciate some of these things that you're saying, because just in terms of the honesty, and I really think it's great, and there's obviously, I think you're kind of the exception in that case, not the norm, because there are a lot of coaches who are very selective about the media, and I think there's some who even have kind of disdain is too strong, but at least like skepticism, and rightfully so. So I appreciate you.
Well, I think it's, sorry for interrupting a little bit, but the media's job is to scrutinize, to criticize, to say what they think. And sometimes coaches, I think, take these things really personally, and obviously we invest a lot of time in what we do, but if you can't accept that as part of the job, then go do something else.
Right. But then there's also obviously, I think it's a big topic in Germany about, the level of qualifications needed to, and not just, not in terms of having an opinion, but I think there's a difference between having an opinion and having a professional opinion, and where that goes into personal territory. So, but I think
I'll interrupt you one more time.
Yeah,
sorry.
Of course.
When when I see Jesse Marsch, honestly, that motivates me.
Mm-hmm. That does. Okay.
You know what I mean? That doesn't intimidate me or make me feel like, oh, I shouldn't be. It's okay. Good. I'll show them. I'll win them over. I'm gonna, with my work and with the way that the team will play, we're gonna show these guys how good we can be, and then they're gonna love us. And that's my experience, whether it was as a player or as a coach. It's about inspiring people to believe that we can do more than what we're expected to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was wondering how that sort of meshes with sort of the Red Bull family, because you obviously joined them after your playing career, and I think even just 2015 in New York, and there's clearly an argument of there existing a Red Bull style, which is certainly, I think, evident in Salzburg and Leipzig, and to some extent in New York for sure. I mean, you probably can tell us a lot more about this. But first of all, do you agree about this style being visible, and how much of a sort of exchange back and forth is there between the different clubs, or even just Salzburg and Leipzig, in terms of coaching staff and know-hows and those kind of things?
Well, that has changed even in my time with Red Bull, because in 2015, that was the first year that Leipzig, 2016 was the first year that Leipzig was in the Bundesliga. And so we could operate as one club theoretically, because Salzburg and Leipzig were not competing in Europe. But now, after 2016 into 2017, that changed, because Leipzig qualified for Champions League, and Salzburg was always playing in Europa Liga. So that meant that now we had to separate what the relationships were, and that exists. But obviously, we all have relationships from the past. It's not like Julian Nagelsmann and I are speaking with each other every week, but we know each other and we're aware of each other's football. And I think there's an appreciation for what each other does. But one of the things about, even like, if you talk about the tutelage of Ralf Rangnick, he is a very strict thinker in the philosophy of the way we play football. Now, he also is very flexible in understanding that not every coach is going to interpret the way he thinks about football the same. And that's one of, Ralf and Helmut Gross really created this football over years, and it was an evolutionary process. But I think they were also very aware that not every coach is going to implement everything exactly the same, and they have to give freedom to coaches to take the philosophy and apply it the way that they think that they should. And that's also unique to their particular player pool and particular league and competition and everything. So, yes, do we have a playing style? 100%, no question. Do Julian and I interpret that differently? 100%, yes. Are there advantages to the things he does, and are there, and disadvantages? Are there advantages to the way that I do it, and disadvantages? Yes to all those questions. But I mean, I think it's been fun to watch Julian kind of come to Leipzig, apply some of the things that he does, also take some of the things that Red Bull does, and then grow within the system. And that's certainly what I try to do as well with the way that we do things. So I say often that once you get familiar with the philosophy, it can almost teach itself. And one example I have of that is when I was I met with Ralf and Helmut, and then we traveled to Doha together. I watched Leipzig and Salzburg train, and I took a lot of their ideas, and I loved it. It was really like an explosion in my footballing head. And then I really put it all to practice in my own way in New York over the entire season. Like for the rest of that 10-month period where I was in MLS and we won the Supporter Shield in 2015, I didn't speak on the phone with Helmut or Ralf again. We texted and just supported each other in different little ways. Then I came back and I talked with them about some of the things that I was experiencing, about what we were doing, and they talked about some of the things that they were experiencing and now playing in the getting to the Bundesliga and some of the things that they were encountering. And it was incredible to see that we were experiencing a lot of the same things, what opponents were trying against us, what we thought the next stages of some of our tactical details were, how we were trying to push the envelope and to get better within our teams. And I talked about this with the psychologist at the time, whose name was Sasha Lenza, who's now at Schalke, and he said to me, 4 cultures around the world at around the same stages of human development, civilization development, all invented the wheel around the same time, but in 4 different locations. And he said maybe it's a little bit like that the challenges of our football and the experiences of what you see and what opponents present force all of us to think a little bit about how to get and grow and get a little bit better and adapt within our own independent teams and leagues. And so I believe that. I believe that once you learn this philosophy, that it can in many ways teach itself, because you have to come up with solutions on your own.
You brought up Ralf Rangnick, who has been one of the most fascinating figures in German and even European football for over 2 decades by this point. He was someone who introduced the modern back four to a wider public in Germany around 2000 when he was coaching Ulm. He was then called the football professor by the media. Later, of course, he took over RB Leipzig and managed the entire Red Bull football operation, but also for a period coached Leipzig's team, and you worked under him. What was your first impression of him, and later then, did you view him as someone who was obsessed with details, or rather someone who was thinking and working with a long-term vision? I was really interested to hear your opinion on Rangnick.
Well, the first time I met him was an interview with him and Gerard Houllier. They came to interview me for the New York Red Bulls job. And most of the discussion started with Gerard and him and I talking about football. And I talked about counter-pressing. I talked about pressing. I talked about manipulating space with how you move your team with and without the ball. And quite honestly, I never heard the name Ralf Rangnick, and I never knew anything about his football. But he could, a lot of the things that we thought about or thought similarly about, it sparked his interest. And so he was really quiet. And it was mostly Gerard and I think he was just observing. And then the last hour of the interview was almost him and I arguing, what I thought was arguing. And it was a football discussion, but it was, a lot of kind of back and forth, and him being very adamant about the things that he thought about, and me being not so sure and being more subjective or about certain things. And then I left the interview thinking, there's no way I'm getting this job, right? Based on the way the conversation went. And I got a text from the CEO at the time, whose name was Marc de Grand Prix, about a half hour later, and he said, "They love you." And I had before that even spoken to my wife, and I was like, forget that job. But this is sort of the beauty of Ralf, is he's a very analytical thinker. I would describe the 2 parts of Ralf are, there's the analytical teacher, right? That is all about evolving the philosophy and sharing the philosophy and teaching the philosophy. And then there's the ultra competitive Ralf that has no room for or flexibility for failure, for not absolutely committing the best. And, the two of them together can create a bit of a mad scientist feel. And it can on days be a lot of pressure and very stressful. But then on other days can be very much about learning and about teaching and about there's a warm feel to it. And so, it depends. When he's in the sporting director role, I think he took on more of the teacher role. And when he's in more of the coaching role, then he's more a little bit focused on the success part. But nonetheless, these qualities about him have made him successful. Now, when you talk about Red Bull, obviously Helmut and Ralf have this shared vision of football, but you have to also talk about Herr Mateschitz, because it was his idea to go to Germany. It was his idea to create a broader perspective of relationships between clubs. And, he's not just applied that to football. He's applied that to auto racing. He's applied that to skiing. He's applied that obviously to the product. So it was, I think, the meeting of these two geniuses coming together that really created what Red Bull is now, and what the philosophy is, what the structure of the football clubs are. And I think in the end, it's become in many ways a model for modern day football, right? It's not just the philosophy, but it's also the structure of the clubs and the young and finding young players and scouting and coaching and everything and academies. So for me, I feel very fortunate for that meeting that I had with Ralf and Gerard Houllier, because it's given me a real opportunity to I think achieve and develop as a coach, and to be part of something that's, I think, very unique to world football.
Indeed. The Red Bull clubs have been able to create a certain philosophy that stands out in a way. I mean, I guess there is an advantage if you, as it was the case in Leipzig, can build something from the ground up. Now at Salzburg, things are a bit different. It feels like you're in a constant rebuilding phase. Salzburg have gained notoriety as a football factory for high-level talents, but the downside is that you lose these talents very quickly. I mean, just a few weeks ago, you had to say goodbye to Dominik Szoboszlai because he moved on and signed with RB Leipzig. How do you approach this situation? How do you, as a coach, constantly rebuild a team after pivotal players like Holland, like Minamino, and now like Szoboszlai leave Salzburg?
Yes. Yes. So here's how I look at this. Being the coach of Red Bull Salzburg, you have to be committed to developing young players. And the beauty is you get a lot of highly talented young players, and now it's about maximizing their learning curve, maximizing their potential, maximizing the people that they can become, right? Because it's really important to understand it's not just about the player. It's often more about the person. And so this is our Art and Weise. This is our philosophy. This is our way, right? And it's beautiful, right? Now, I've been in charge of taking the club sort of into the next stage, into this Champions League phase, right? So for 14 years, the club had tried to get to Champions League and had failed 11 times in the playoff round. Then I come in and we were automatically qualified. And then the next year we finally advanced past that qualification round. So 2 years in a row now we've been in Champions League. We've performed really well in Champions League, and I think inspired a lot of different people by our football and by who we are. But ultimately, in my mind, we've come up short as well because we haven't advanced out of the group phase. We've qualified for Europa League in both years, and I think doing so in an inspired way. But ultimately, my goal, and this is part of my Americanness, is to figure out how to get over not just into Champions League again, but to also think about how to get into the qualification round. Now, if you get into the qualification round, you're most likely drawing Liverpool, Man City, Barcelona, Real Madrid, and you're probably getting waxed in the next round. way. But still, like, that's the ambition in me is to find a way to achieve that. But I also understand to do that, you probably need a few more experienced players, a few more players that have already achieved that, have been around the block, that understand, how to manage those situations. But my job as the coach here is to always develop the next generation of players, because that's how we do things. So, I'm caught a little bit in between, wanting to be ambitious to achieve a little bit more, but also understanding what the role of this club is and what the way of that we do things and how we take the next generation of 17, 18-year-olds and turn them into the next superstars of Europe. So as long as I'm in this role, I have to really appreciate that what this club has done has been fantastic, and the identity that has been built. We have to stay true to that. But I'm also always trying to figure out ways to push the envelope, to find ways to take the next steps, to encourage more ambition, to continue to try to change the idea of what we are and who we are, and become more. So those are the competing interests a little bit right now, but I think that we can still find a way to continually push the envelope a little bit higher every year and get a little bit closer to the ultimate goals. So, but at the same, I really, really am thankful to be here. I'm really appreciative of the support that they've given me. I'm really appreciative of the identity of what the club is. I hope that from the fans' perspective, from the owners' perspective, from the leaders in the club's perspectives, that they're proud of the work that I've personally done and that we've done as a trainer team and as a team, what we've been able to achieve, and the work will always be ongoing. So in the end, may it lead to other opportunities for me. I think that's natural to think so and believe so. But I know the best thing to do is to just stick to the work that I do every day and do the best that I can for this group of players and this team.
All right, great. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for your time. Normally at this point in the show, we plug Twitter, and Jesse, you're also a Twitter guy. You're at Jesse Marsch there. Abel is at BundesPL on Twitter. I am CC_Eckner on Twitter. And if you want to support us, support our show, please visit patreon.com/thefootballpod. And for now, we are out.